Welcome, everyone, once again to another session of our Power in Partnership Master Series. Thank you for joining us. And as usual, we'll begin with just bringing ourselves back to this present moment, right here, right now. So if you're willing and able, I invite you to lower your gaze or close your eyes. And please do not do this if you're driving and listening, but just take a moment to let yourself get here. Inhaling in all that you've already done today, and exhaling, letting go. Inhaling all that you have planned for the rest of the day, thoughts, dreams, desires, acknowledging them, and exhaling, letting go. And inhaling this wonderful sweetness of this moment right here, carving out some space for whatever comes to the surface. And exhaling, letting go of that as well. And then you can raise your gaze, and I would be honored to introduce my presenter today. This is a fellow Imago relationships therapist. I'd like to introduce Joe Kort, who is a licensed sex and relationship therapist. He's written almost a handful, I believe it's 4 books so far, and I imagine there's another in progress. Teaches part of the faculty at the University of Michigan, and really helping in so many areas. I had an opportunity to hear the update of Joe's life, and just more and more working in training professionals and getting more and more well-versed in the LGBTQ community and the range of sexuality and how to bring optimal health. A regular blogger to Psychology Today and Huffington Post, and just contributing in what appears to me is every way possible. I have a warm welcome to Joe Kort. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you and about this topic.
Great, great. So I would love for us to have a foundation of, coming back to the moment and then having that vision of where you'd like to go. So I will offer a few sentence stems. As I'm sitting here, I'm experiencing right here, right now.
As I'm sitting here, I'm experiencing eagerness and excitement.
Eagerness and excitement, yeah. And where I'd like to be at the end of my career.
I would like to be primarily a student, and really just listening, and because it's hard to be as much of a student in my current career. I'm teaching, I'm learning a lot, but I'm teaching more, and I'd like to be more of a student.
I hear more of a student, a lifelong learner, more of a student.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. And one thing that you can do to help get you there, back to that place of not just teaching, but also receiving and being a learner, a student.
That's a good question. I've been trying to add to my schedule more things that I can learn, more webinars, more signing up for things so that people can teach me, and listening more, really.
Yeah. So carving out time in your schedule to allow that information to flow in, and the all-important skill of listening in order to absorb and take what you can use in that information. Great. So one thing that I appreciate about my career, would you fill that in?
Oh my God, the one thing I definitely appreciate about my career is that I can do all kinds of different things. I'm not stuck in one thing. I can teach, I can be a therapist, I can supervise, I can write books and articles. I mean, it's like I never get bored of what I'm doing because there's always something else I can do, and the variety.
Great. Yeah, I really hear that ability to harness your skill and offer it in a myriad of ways, and that's probably the number one thing you appreciate is you never get bored.
Never.
Okay, great. And in this idea of relationship therapy, relationship work, particularly sexuality, which we're going to dive into more in our conversation today, how would you say that you tend to that space, the space of relationship with yourself, with other? What's one way that you tend to the space between?
Like you introduced yourself and myself as an Imago therapist, that's the best thing I've ever learned in working with couples. I used to think actually that couples came to the office to just break up, because of their differences, because I didn't realize I wasn't a good couples therapist, and I wasn't able to keep them together and hold the space. So then I became Imago trained and realized that that most couples don't come to break up. They come to really heal and reconnect. And so what I love about Imago is having uh, stopping all the fighting, stopping all the back and forth and the accusations, and really sort of forcing the situation that they must intentionally listen and they must intentionally send in a way that speaks to them and not who they're profiling their partner kind of thing.
Right. Right. Yeah, I really hear that Imago therapy gave you that tool that to see that the space between really needs that elimination of the shame, blame, and the criticism, the negativity, and to have the tools to be able to actually relate to each other. And the good news is that most couples do come into therapy wanting to heal, wanting to repair, and not just break up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what is one tool? I'm sure there's a veritable toolkit that you carry, but one tool that we can just launch our conversation with that you offer to people to help tend to that space. How would you describe that?
I would call the tool differentiation.
Okay.
Differentiation is most therapists would understand it because they talk about it in terms of relational or emotional differentiation, which is what makes you different doesn't make you wrong. What makes me different doesn't make me right. That we can both have differences and agree to disagree and stay in connection. And the thing that I'm offering differently these days, or in addition to, is sexual differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
And you have your sexual needs and me not make you wrong or bad for those, and vice versa. Can I have mine? And most therapists don't do that. We stay in the realm of emotional and relational, but we don't introduce that into the sexual realm, and we need to.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's almost like when I go get a massage, like people will massage certain areas, but there's certain areas they won't go to. And not just the sexual areas, but the whole belly region, the whole front, like the soft, vulnerable stuff that I've noticed that in my own work as a therapist. Just, where are the areas that we do need to go into? People need to talk about. They need this sacred, safe space to explore, to get the language. And I did not introduce your topic, but a wonderful topic title, Understanding the Landscape of Male Sexuality. And you've just brought that up as one of the tools is differentiation, knowing the differences that we are not me, and really playing that out in the topic, the arena of sexuality. And I'd love to just let you take it off from there in terms of where you want to go with your topic today.
Sure. Yeah. And, people may have been critical of my topic because when they hear it, they're like, well, what about the woman? You're talking about the landscape of male. What about the woman? And I say that the landscape of female sexuality is extremely important, and it's already honored to some degree in the therapy room where the landscape of male sexuality is not. So I'm trying to bring in some balance, and not to say one is over the other. However, at this point in the therapy room, what is over the other is the woman's, I call it, so his manscape and her womanscape, right? Sexual manscape is very frightening and very scary to therapists, to women, to even the men that have them. Mm-hmm. And for women's sexual womanscape, it's less frightening. It's more relational. It's more attached. It's more connected. It's more what we talk about in our culture, especially in the therapy culture. Mm-hmm. And so then what happens when they come into the therapy room is the man's sexual landscape or manscape, whatever I call it, is diminished or pathologized or labeled as a sex addiction or something, and misunderstood.
I see. Yeah, yeah. So I really hear that, and I hear the reverence and respect behind what you're doing, that this is not just that we need to focus on male sexuality, but to bring some balance, particularly in the therapeutic realm where if sexuality is even brought up, okay, that's a good thing, but then it's often focused on the woman and the relational attachment connection, which almost is less charged or safer or something, because I did hear you speak to what that brings up, not just in the therapist or the female partner, but also the male partner himself. And I'm wondering if you could say a little more about that.
Yeah, so I had a couple ones come in, and he's given me total permission to use this line. The straight couple, and the guy said, I feel like when I fight with my wife, she has a machete and I have a Swiss pocket knife, and then we start fighting. And so it was really a very interesting thing to say because, and I always say this, we stop touching little boys at the age of 8. We teach them to stop touching other little boys. We teach them to not have access to their feelings, not have access to their emotions, not have language for their emotions. So we start teaching them that in a very different way than we give access to women. So then when they grow up and the wife and the husband are in my office and the wife says he's dead inside and he has no emotion. And I say, well, is that true when you watch his sports? No, it's sports. He's screaming at the TV. He's all over the place. Is that true at work? No, he's got a lot of passion for what he does. And that's why he's so successful at what he does. So men have access to their inner life and their emotions through sports, through work, through violence, and through sex. And that's it. And so then they come into the therapy room and we expect them, and women expect them to be able to catch up right away. And I say, yes, we should expect them to do some work to catch up, but can the women and the therapists meet the man where he's at right now too? Not instead of, too. And that's very threatening to a lot of people.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
Thanks. I hear you with the going dead inside, and as you highlighted the age of 8, you know, I have 2 children myself, 13 and 10, and I was just giving tickles to my 10-year-old this morning, and he's still loving it, and just thinking about I'm going to bring this in and let me know if this is relevant at all or not, but we went to a training recently with the young children. There's a lot of social media training, and if they're going to post, to be light, bright, and polite. And I think that's another arena where men and women are shutting off their emotional realness, you know, real, raw, and vulnerable. That's what I want to know. So thinking about that, and then some of the disturbing facts that these experts that are coming in to teach parents, they're saying that children have access to pornography, and most often the initial age is 8 years old, that they're able to access that. So that's what that brought up in what you were saying.
Well, and sadly, and when you bring that up, sadly, there is such little sex education in the schools. And if there is, it's very functional. Here's how the penis works. Here's how the vagina works. Nothing about sexual pleasure, nothing about anything other than heterosexual pleasure. And so then pornography becomes children's sexual education. And rather than getting the education from schools or the family saying, here's what sexual health conversations should be and look like.
Right. Yeah, so you're bringing up the importance of the power of partnership, which is what this whole series is about. I think of power as where we get our energy from, and the partnership is being able to bring out our whole selves, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and in an empowering way. And so to do that, not just within a couple, but also within the broader context of the family. And ultimately, you know, we could talk about our dreams and wishes for communities and schools and the greater picture, but it has to start, you know, as Harville and Helen from Imago Therapy say, let's change the world one relationship at a time, and to come back to that primary relationship, and then how do parents express that to kids? So I think we could go in a lot of directions. I want to bring it back to male sexuality in terms of that getting shut off at age 8. What, well, not as a blanket statement, but as an interesting place to explore. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. So what happens then is a woman comes in, and I'm making sweeping generalizations. I can just imagine people listening to this going, "Oh my God, he's saying all women, all men." Of course, I'm not, but I can't have a conversation unless I do sweeping generalizations. So in general, women are able to speak more relationally. Their attachment language is connecting, eye gazing. Sort of like, let's calm down a little bit and get to know each other before we enter the sexual realm. And while men can appreciate that and need to learn how to do that, that's not where men start. Men's sexual or attachment language is sexualized. It's eroticized. If we remember that we stop touching boys and we start teaching them to reject all of the stuff, we basically truncate boys into becoming men whose attachment language is through the lens of sex. So when a woman says, every time you touch me, you turn it into sex. Why? Because that's his attachment language. When we're sexual and I want more foreplay, but you want to get right to the sex act. Why? Because that's his love language. And instead of making that bad and wrong and he needs to change, what about, okay, yeah, it needs to modify. And what about women saying, I'll go there because I hear that's your attachment language too, as long as we're going both ways. And that's not what happens for most heterosexual couples, and it's not what happens in the therapy room. It's not a both ways. And when I have tried to write about going both ways, actually I just did this in an article that I'm going to give as a free gift after this interview. the responses in the magazine that I wrote in, Psychotherapy Networker, were, and all I did was introduce the notion that male sexuality should be a part of the therapy room. The responses I got were, well, now you're lopsiding the room and you're telling us that the woman doesn't have an agency, or nor should she have an opportunity to have a say. And I never said that. The whole idea was, it's all about her say, and let's bring the man in there with her, not instead of,
Right, right.
People get threatened.
Yeah. So, Joe, do we need to give him a machete, or do we need to give her a Swiss Army knife?
That's a great question. I think we need to take the knives away.
Exactly.
And say, can we both listen to the differences without pathologizing and shaming each other? And a lot of times it's just a naivete, and it's lack of sex education and healthy sexuality for men and women, and just people.
Right, right. So that sense of the education, it doesn't come in our schools. It rarely comes in the families. Is it too late for a couple when they come in your office? Do you think it's too late to learn the tools for a healthy sexual life?
I don't, but some couples do come in when it's too late, and that's unfortunate. But I think if couples can come in sooner, that it's not too late. By the time they come into my office, the majority of couples have not come in too late. What happens is we have a lot of material to uncover, and a lot of them will say, we only want to talk about the sex. Well, making sex better isn't going to make the emotional, relational side better. We have to work with both the sex and the relational side together, in parallel.
Yeah, that to me sounds like the both and that you were talking about. Let's do both ways. The female's approach to the attachment language and the love languages, and the man's more predominant approach through touch and sex, and hopefully not sports and violence. And what was the other one that you said? Screaming at each other at work. Yeah. Did you want to say more about that?
It wasn't that that sports is bad. It's that in addition to sports, in addition to work, and violence doesn't even have to be violence. It can be, that he's into, karate, or he's in some kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to equate that. I don't want to take anything necessarily away from him, but he does need to learn how to be able to have the similar attachment language to his wife, but as does she. And usually what his attachment language is objectifying her body parts. Now, when I say this, women will say, whoa, 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 I don't want to be objectified. But there's a great, and a lot of people know her now, sex and relationship therapist named Esther Perel. Mm-hmm. And what she says is, by allowing your husband or your man to objectify you, that allows him to separate you from his mother. That's one way to look at it. And it's not about objectifying you full time, but in sex, we're having fantasies. We're playing. It's like play therapy, being sexual. Right. And that's one way to do it. And a lot of women, I think, cringe, and I don't blame them because they spent a lifetime being objectified. But this is different.
Yeah.
And then what makes it different is the man doesn't forget that you're his wife. In addition to being my wife, I'd like to objectify you. And I think women need to learn to do more of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can see how these would be topics that people might go, whoa, But,
I know they're challenging.
Yeah, they're challenging, but in a way that stretches and helps. I always like to look at, is what I'm doing getting me where I want to go? And if not, what are some other possibilities? And what you're offering are other possibilities. And that's precisely what I was hoping this conversation would be. So thank you for offering those gifts, the opportunity to think outside the box, the opportunity to see that it's not all or nothing, that, if my husband objectifies me, I'm only an object. No, if I can allow that and play with that and roll with that, and then I know that he knows I'm not his mom, boy, I'm more inclined to go along with that. So within that framework, that really, that makes sense. You make sense to me. So I wanted to follow up on the sports thing briefly, if I may. I'm curious. I've had this notion before. Someone suggested that a man's mind is like a sports bar with all the videos going with different sports, and that's their sex sort of light up in their brain. And for a woman, it's not that way. And I'm curious, does that have any validity in your professional opinion?
It does. And now, of course, sweeping generalizations, right? Because not all women are like this, not all men are like this, but absolutely. I think the TVs on that women would be watching maybe would be the Oprah Winfrey Network, going around the sports bar. Like, and for me, as I'm not a traditional man, when I walk into a sports bar, I'm like, this is cool, all the sports. I don't like sports. Could one of these TVs have Oprah Winfrey Network on it? I kind of like have a better experience here than watching that. So, but it is true that men are more. It says that men aren't relational because every man who ever walks my office says, if my wife isn't turned on by what I want and doesn't like it, I'm turned off. So it's
Yeah.
not like he just wants to use her. They feel used. A lot of women feel used. It's not about using. It's coming around to engaging in acts that women aren't comfortable doing and weren't taught to be comfortable with. Just like men weren't taught to be comfortable with touching and foreplay. And should he learn it? Sure. Is that the only way to have sex? No.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you say that once again, that the piece you were just saying that about men being relational and they come in your office? I really wanted to grok that.
Yeah, that men will say to me repeatedly, if I these are the things I like doing sexually, but if my wife is turned off or she doesn't want it, I'm turned off.
Mm-hmm.
They want her to be aroused and eroticizing the same thing they're doing. They want her to get into it. It's not like they're so selfish that they're like, just do this and I forget about you. It's do this and be into it with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What you're saying makes a lot of sense in that relational space and all the energy that goes into it, and how to hold that and have the ability to meet each other where they are, which is what you said at the beginning of our conversation, that ultimate differentiation that we are not me, and here's where you are, here's where I am, and tending to that space between. So I love that notion of being able to recognize that men have that relational piece as well, and women have that erotic piece, and how to explore that. And I think one of the primary presenting problems that couples bring for me is about initiation. And there's a popular idea that the person with the lowest drive, the lowest level of interest, is the one that often initiates. And I'm curious kind of how to get the ball rolling, if you will.
Well, actually, it's the one with the higher interest that often initiates. The lower interest doesn't, and the higher interest, no, it's the opposite. So then you get these couples coming in, and the one with the higher sexual desire, feels like they stop after a while because they never feel the interest.
There you go.
You know?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, and the ball rolling is hard. Every couple's different. The low desire isn't going to just suddenly become the initiator. You can teach them to initiate a little more, but the higher desire is always going to be more of the initiator. It's really more about once the initiation begins, what happens? How do you guys get to the point where you start feeling each other's desire for each other? Mm-hmm. It may not be in the beginning. It may have to, and for most women, it's not. Women's desire comes after they begin,
Right.
Men have it working around almost all the time,
Right. And I think for women to hear that, it's very validating that I may not be turned on all the time. I may not be in the mood all the time, but to know that it's normal for women to have that experience of taking a little bit of time there. So
totally.
Yeah. And in terms of I want to open up the airtime as we're drawing it into the conversation. Anything else that comes up that you wanted to be sure to offer up in our conversation today?
One thing I'll say, and I'm going to try to say it as polite as possible, because the words I'm going to use are going to be polite. So women will often say, and they have this in romance novels and in movies, they have an alpha male, and that's usually in the romance situation, where he's trying to come on to her, and she's saying, no, I don't want it, no, but she wants she wants to be told, I'm beautiful, I'm everything, I'm your one and only, take me, and it's all normalized in our culture, and we all get it, and it's understood and really approved in our culture, and even in therapy. Men have the same desires, but we say it through sex. So instead of saying it in the exact same way, men say it through their genitals. Tell me I have the best genitals and the biggest genitals you've ever seen. When I orgasm, I want you to take all of me. I want to be taken and overwhelmed too. I want you to want me so much that you let me take you. Because in romance novels, the alpha male ends up, relationally play raping the victim. the victim. You know, even I'm using a word that still confuses with real rape. It's really a dance of, I don't want it, I don't want it. Okay, I surrender. And then the person who's alpha takes over. Men want that too, but we do it a little differently. We don't do it relationally. We're doing it more aggressively. We're doing it in ways that are scary to women, and to some men, they feel a lot of shame. And I'm just trying to balance it. I'm not saying I'm right and that this is the final word. I'm just trying to say the underneath the sexual language is an attachment language that can be understood by both. It's the way both are, if both can stop being distracted by the exterior ways it's being expressed, there's a better possibility for connection.
Yeah, yeah.
That's probably a long-winded way of answering you.
No, I think that's important to bring up, and that better possibility of connection is what this is all about. Because I think and you and I spoke to this the other day, that given the current cultural climate and the media climate and political climate and what's going on, my sense is there's a lot of revulsion going on, a lot of, whoa, get that away from me. And, how do we integrate with that with, you spot it, you got it. There's something about, what can we learn from this? How can we as a culture grow to that next conscious level of partnership? And once again, it has to start in the home, the two people, and then within the family ripple. And I guess, Joe, how do you not get overwhelmed? How do you not get despondent? How do you not get despairing about the state of affairs?
Such a good
I
question.
see you go like this.
Have my mind. You mean, how do I not get overwhelmed, or how do I get the couple not? I'm not overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed when the couple is unwilling, or partners are unwilling to settle down and really hear each other's perspectives. Then I get overwhelmed because I can't help you. I want to help you with your reactivity on both sides, but eventually, if you're unwilling to put that aside and hear your partner's different perspective, this isn't going to work. This is going to move toward a divorce or parallel lives in a relationship that is unsatisfying.
Right. I think that's a beautiful way for us to summarize this conversation, because what you just said to me is the essence of partnership, that we need to be for each other. We need to take a stand for each other. And we need to recognize that when we advocate for our partner's needs, we're actually healing some part of ourselves. And it takes higher level thinking to get there. But I think if people can recognize, my other needs, the rest of my life, the quality goes up, that's what matters most. And that's why I feel so passionate about this topic of power in partnership. It's not power over. It's not, how do you let the man call the shots a few times a week and the woman call the shots the rest of the time? It's the both and bringing it both to the forefront. And Joe, thank you so much. There are not many male therapists talking about the sexual health and the needs of having that brought to not just the therapy room, but to the family setting and to the more general public, that our sexuality is a part of our life, and we are missing a great opportunity here if we don't wake up to a lot of what you've just shared with us. So I really want to thank you for your time and your expertise and all that, pardon me, all that you continue to offer. And
thank you.
Along that line, do you have a free gift for our audience today?
I do. If they go to my website, Kort, JoeKort.com, there is, under the articles, under relationships and sexuality, it says, it's an article called "Is All Fair in Love and Sex? How Couples Can Embrace Their Sexual Differences." And it expands on everything that we just talked about in here.
Great. So that's a perfect place to direct people. We'll have that written up on the email as well. And JoeKort.com. Look for his articles, look for his upcoming books. And thank you so much, Joe. I look forward to future collaboration with you and healing the planet one relationship at a time. So
I love it. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Be well.
All right, you too.